Welcome to this episode. Today we're talking about the 5 biggest purchases that I see federal retirees regret the most often. Because I see a lot of people retire. I see a lot of big purchases all the time. And here are the 5 that I see people regretting the most. Now, when it comes to spending money, especially large amounts of money in retirement, there is no right answer. Depending on how much money you have, depending on what you need in retirement, some things are absolutely worth it. I want to make this exceptionally clear before I go into these 5 things, is that any of these 5 things for someone might be the absolute worst decision they possibly can make, but for someone else could make them incredibly happy and satisfied because of their goals and their dreams and what they can afford. So let me make that very clear, right? These are just my experience and what I have seen that people have regretted buying in retirement, but certainly there are exceptions to these rules. So let's dive right in. Number 1, the biggest thing that I see that people often regret in retirement is a bigger house. Again, there's exceptions, but let me paint you a picture. So someone is retiring. They live in a fairly high cost of living area, and they retire to somewhere where it's cheaper to live. So just taking the money they had in their house, they can actually buy a bigger house for the same amount somewhere else, right? A lower cost of living area. They were like, wow, I could get more house. Let's do it. I always wanted a bigger house. Boom, that's amazing. Well, there's a couple things that surprise them. First, the maintenance, right? The maintenance to first pave, to heat it, to cool it, all those things, it costs more than they expected. They're like, oh, that's surprising, right? And just all the time and energy to take care of the yard, take care of the house, take care of everything that comes with a larger house. It's surprising, like, oh man, this is a lot of work. And often they regret it. Now, there's exceptions. Some people, it's an amazing thing. They absolutely love their new retirement home, right? Just keep that in mind. Is that a bigger home is not always better. It depends. It depends on your goals, depends on the needs, and you have to plan accordingly. Just be wary. Bigger is not always better, even if you could afford it. And if you can't afford it, well, that's a whole different question, right? That's a whole nother question. That's number 1. Number 2, a really expensive car. Some people are car people, right? I'm not one of those people, but some people are, and they love their cars. And I envy their passion. Whenever I see passion, I love it, right? That's great. I love to see people that are excited and passionate. And if you're one of those people, hey, by all means, buy your nice car, right? By all means. However, I see other people that buy a nice car because they're like, oh, I'm retired. This is what you do, right? When they can't necessarily afford it. And with nicer cars comes more expensive maintenance and lots of things, right? When it comes to luxury vehicles. And it surprises them. And at a certain point, they kind of get used to it. They're like, man, that older car, that whatever car, that not as expensive car got me there just the same. And they end up regretting it. Now, again, that may not be you, but just think about it, right? Are you a car person? Is that where you want to invest your time, energy, your money? Or maybe not. Food for thought. That's number 2. Number 3, okay? Now this one, again, there is a lot of exceptions, but just bear with me. Number 3, big travel experiences. So one thing to keep in mind is people get really excited about retirement, which is amazing. I love to see that my clients and you folks are so excited to retire. I love that. That's amazing. However, we have to remember there are some financial constraints, right, when it comes to retiring and the money you have in retirement. Some people say, hey, look, I'm finally retired. Let's go. Let's party. And that's great. I love that. All I want to say is, hey, there's still sometimes financial constraints, right? Sometimes, how much can you afford, right? You don't want to go crazy year after year after year, crazy trips that you really can't afford, right? Often people regret them and they realize, hey, the things that I actually loved the most were the simple free things on these trips, and instead of spending bunches of money on things that I kind of enjoyed, right? So really, today in this episode, we're going to talk about the 2 other things that most retirees regret, right? But in general, it's all about understanding what you actually care about and allocating your money and your time towards those things and not getting wrapped up with what other people do, other people say, whatever. What do you want? If you point your money there and don't spend too much where you run out of money, then you're going to be in a good spot. Okay. Let's see. Number 4. Number 4, one of the biggest things that my clients and other people I've seen regret the very most is when they start giving very generous, large, or cash presents to their children. Now, in some cases, this can be an incredible blessing for the children. It can be incredibly fulfilling for the parents. But often what happens is, at first, it's really fun and exciting and fulfilling, but then the kids start expecting it, right? Oh, you paid for that massive trip for us to go to Hawaii? Oh, wow. What about, this trip or whatever? You've been paying for this. Why don't you keep paying for this? Whatever, right? There becomes a level of expectation. It gets complicated. It gets messy. And many people regret it. Like, man, I wish I would have never helped at all. I wish I would have never given these large presents at all. Now, again, there's exceptions. Sometimes it could be an incredible blessing and the parents love it, right? However, just be wary. Be wary that more is not always better, right? Giving these big gifts is not always a net positive given everything that comes into play. Number 5. Now, this is somewhat related to a previous one, but it's a whole nother game. Number 5 is a vacation home or a second home. Many people like to be a snowbird, right? Maybe you're like, oh, I love it here in Virginia during, let's say, the fall or the summer, whatever, but I want to be down somewhere else when the cold months come along. And that is wonderful. And if you could afford it, that's amazing. That's amazing. However, some things really surprise people. Again, like we talked about just getting a bigger home than normal. Hey, now you got to maintain 2 places. Now you got to heat and cool 2 places. Now you got to pay the property taxes on 2 places, and you're only going to be living in them for some of the time. Now, immediately, some people say, hey, look, yeah, I'm just going to be there during the summer, but I'm going to rent it out. I'm going to rent it out when I'm not there. And that may be maybe you could do Airbnb. Maybe you could actually make a little profit or maybe break even, something like that. If you can, wonderful. That is going to take some time. You're going to have to manage it. It's going to take some work, which can surprise people. It surprises them how much work it takes just to manage it, right? And so many people are surprised about how much work it is to manage 2 places that it ends up not being worth it, and they end up regretting it. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be you. If you could afford it, and that's your dream to be a snowbird, to always have great weather because you're moving back and forth, amazing. Amazing. That's amazing. Just be wary. Be wary of those things. So those are the big 5. Those are the big purchases I see all the time that I from my clients and from people I work with. All these people like, if I could go back, I wouldn't have done it, right? I get that sort of thing a lot. And again, it's not about not buying things. It's not about that. I want you to enjoy your money. I want you to. I want to enjoy my money, right? Life is short. You want to enjoy your money, but you just want to make sure you allocate it in a way that you actually care about. Not because your sister went on that grand trip. No, because you want to. And you are aligning your money to your values and things that you care most about. And sometimes simple is some of the most fun, most helpful things, and most fulfilling things in life. Not always. Sometimes that nice car really does hit the spot, right? You'll just have to figure it out for you. And these are some of the hardest decisions to decide what you actually care about. That's hard, right? That is hard. So I hope that's helpful. But if you have a different experience, if you bought one of these things and just made your year, made your life, you loved it, put in the comments below. Please share. But if maybe you agree with one of my things, please put in the comments below. When we all share, we learn and get better together. So if you're new here, again, my name is Dallin Hawes, and there's tons of great resources in the description below, whether it's the free TSP book, free trainings, tons of great things to make sure you are going to be prepared to have a great federal retirement. So I hope that's helpful. Have an incredible rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one.